What's going on, YouTube? So coming back with the SEC Championship Week video. We are playing Auburn this week. This is game 12, I believe. As you guys can see here, doing pretty well with the awards. We are in the lead for the Maxwell and the best QB, as well as still in first place for the Heisman. Go through the bowl rankings right quick. We are still in first place with FSU following up at number 2, and then Pitt following up at number 3. I think Pitt has a little bit of a bone to pick with that, just because they are the undefeated Power 5 team in that situation. I guess FSU beat some real quality teams. I know FSU is one of the better teams on this game, but as you guys can see there, Pitt is the team with all the first place votes along with us, and they're really the only other undefeated team left on here, and they're still number 3. So, like I said, still in first place for the Heisman, or in the Heisman watch. The guy from Toledo has been following behind pretty closely, and then Omar Jacobs from Bowling Green. I believe it's Omar Jacobs. Stud quarterback back in the day, but never really panned out in the NFL. Like I said, still pretty much far and away better than every other quarterback touchdown-wise, and also just overall stat-wise. But I remember playing this game. It's hard to win the Heisman as a freshman. You could have a ton better stats than any of the other players, and it's still probably gonna shaft you. Like I said, I guess we'll see what happens. All right, so as the game begins, we do get the ball first. I was hoping to get a good quick start on offense, and it looks like we do. Good pass to Gerald Riggs up to the 40-yard line. A good about 20-yard gain on the play. So it's good to get the passing game going early, and it was honestly working pretty well all game. Gerald Riggs also got a lot more work than he did the last couple games, just because got ahead so early and so easily, and the option was working so well that most of the time it wasn't handed to Gerald Riggs, or I just kept it myself. And then if you guys watched the last game against Kentucky, actually put in Arian Foster for Gerald Riggs to get an early look at Arian Foster, since he is a redshirt freshman on this game when you start. So he will be the starter in the following year if I ever do follow up with the next season on this. Like I said, this is my first. This is Andy Millie's first season, so still a freshman. Like I said, not too much doing on the opening drive there, and we end up having to punt. I believe it's past the first. Yeah. We ended up having to punt, and not the way I wanted to start out the first drive, but Auburn didn't get any points on their first drive either. Auburn is a team on this game that is much better on defense than they are on offense, but I believe this was a rematch of the 2004? I want to say the 2004 SEC Championship game. I believe in this game these are the two favorites coming out of each division, unless I'm missing an SEC West team here. Ole Miss is alright, Alabama's alright, but I think both are ranked below. LSU is probably the highest ranked team. I didn't even think of that. But LSU had a pretty miserable season. Even though they were actually the toughest game we had to play all regular season. That was weird. Anyway, like I said, looking to put up our first points of the game. Drawn towards the end of the first quarter here. About 20 seconds to go. And rolling out, we end up hitting, I believe it's number 17 on this play. Might have been number 13. Actually, no, we don't. Sorry, that one was incomplete. I'm thinking of a different play. And end up finding the wide receiver. There we go. That was the one, number 17. And good pass for the first down. Like I said, the passing game was on for most of this game, so that was pretty good. 4:49 left in the second quarter. Red zone scoring's been a positive for us for most of the season, as I do believe we get in here for the touchdown, giving us a 7-0 lead. Then we do get the ball back after Auburn has to punt again. Defense has been solid all season for Tennessee. That is one of their big strengths from the 2005 team, at least that was supposed to be. If you guys actually remember, obviously Tennessee's been a little rough over the last decade as a whole. This was their best year since probably 2007, and I'm talking about this year actually in college football, the 2015-16 season. But the 2005 season, they started out preseason, I believe it was number 2 or number 4, depending on the poll that you looked at. Big national title contender. I was a decent college football fan back then, but not enough to follow the entire season and know who the great teams were, the biggest disappointments. But I do remember that Tennessee was a huge disappointment that year. That was kind of a common thing. They were preseason number 2. It's kind of like Auburn this year, and they ended up going like 5-6 or 5-7, somewhere in that ballpark. Completely botched the second half of the season. Lost games like South Carolina, Alabama, Notre Dame. They did beat LSU that year, though. They also lost to Florida. They did win 3 of their first 4, and it looked like things were going to be okay, especially after that win against LSU. But that's kind of when everything started going downhill for Eric Gage. And years after that, it just kept getting worse for Eric Gage. 2007 actually wasn't a horrible season, though. It could have. I mean, they still made it to the SEC championship game, so it could have gone worse. Anyway, like I said, we got the 14-0 lead here after 1 touchdown by Gerald Riggs and then 1 passing touchdown by Andy Millie. It was nice to get the passing touchdown after having such a run-heavy offense the last couple of games. And we are drawing close to the end of the half here. Trying to put some points up on the board, and we end up getting the touchdown there. Then after actually an interception return for a touchdown, we jump out to the 28-3 lead. After the interception return for a touchdown, Auburn got 3 on the following drive, and they also got the ball at the end or at the beginning of the second half. So there's a big lull between when I scored at the end of the first half and then when I got the ball back in the third quarter. Like I said, though, good game for Gerald Riggs. He had a lot of work, but was able to get over 100 yards, I believe, and also had 2 touchdowns. Might have been 1 through the air, 1 on the ground. Might have been 3 total. I can't really remember. This is one of them. Both Andy Millie and Gerald Riggs were in the zone there, so it seemed like a good idea to do the halfback go with some of the slower players on Auburn's defense being their safeties. This was a little string of injuries on this drive, too. I remember this was like 4 injuries on this drive, like 3 of their guys and 1 of mine. And throughout this entire season, I think I got injured maybe once or twice. Normally in this mode, they might injure you once or twice, especially as an option quarterback, but normally won't keep you out for too long. It really seems useless, the amount of stiff arms I got this year that just kind of pushed me out of bounds. But to be honest, at this game or at this point in the game, for all intents and purposes, it was pretty much put away. We do end up going for it on 4th here. Pretty much say fuck it at this point, and doing probably the most popular play that I tried all season. That was a very good play, honestly. Roll out, try to hit number 13. He was one of our faster receivers, and obviously I can roll out. Normally, the problem with rolling out for me is the throwing accuracy. My accuracy is only like an 80 overall for throwing. And especially when you stop outside the pocket, the accuracy can be extremely, extremely off. You know, obviously throwing in the pocket, it's fine, but I'm a mobile quarterback, so I like utilizing the ability to throw outside of the pocket. And a lot of times there'd be a wide open receiver downfield. Would be an easy throw. His feet were still planted. It wasn't like I was throwing on the run, but I guess it wasn't long enough for him to plant his feet, and it still didn't actually get on target. But nonetheless, this game still had a pretty impressive game running. I believe still over 100 yards on the ground for Andy Millie. Probably around 300 yards, maybe 400 yards total on the ground for Tennessee as a whole. Like I said, it was a pretty good game for Gerald Riggs. If we get about inside the 1-yard line there, 107 yards up to this point exactly. And able to get it in for the touchdown. Brings it to a 42-3 lead. And that's pretty much where it's going to stop. Like I said, we get the ball with about 27 seconds to go. Just try to run out the clock a little bit. And, claim the SEC championship. So, obviously, since we are number 1 and win the SEC, we'll be going to the national championship, like I said, most likely against Florida State. So, should have that done soon. So, definitely check that out. Should be a great game. Probably going to come up with the Heisman presentation between those 2 games. But yeah, like I said, check out how that game looks, and hopefully it turns out well. So that's pretty much it. So yep. Game against Memphis that I was going to try to do was include a little bit more possession timeout. So that just means maybe take a little bit more time selecting my plays, especially when I run the ball and get completed passes. Make sure I keep that momentum going and maybe wind the clock down a little bit more. But as you guys can see, we get the first